What's going on, everybody? It's your man, Louie T, here with another installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Glad you could join me on this late night Louie edition. Number of topics to get to. We're going to clean up the weekend. NBA playoffs to get underway this weekend coming up. We just closed out the regular season. Now we got the play-in tournament. We'll talk about all of that, what we think is going to transpire. NBA championship this year, it's wide open. Anybody could win it, honestly speaking. I want to talk about the draft. Obviously, 2 weeks away, essentially. As we approach Thursday, we'll be 1 week away. And I've been kind of alluding to this and talking about this, what I think is going to happen in the first round, trades that could take place. There are some spots that are just hotter than the rest in the first round. We're going to talk about that tonight. Raiders not taking a first round quarterback. Reports are they're off the quarterback position in the first round. Sounds about right. Devonta Smith gets a new deal. All of that and more here on the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 411th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Sometimes I really, truly think I don't love myself as much as I should. My pinky toe took it on the chin once again. I'm really gunning for this pinky toe for some reason. Remember, I told y'all about 2 months ago, maybe 3, that I had hit my toe on the corner of the ottoman and at full speed for no reason, trying to hurry up before the podcast to go get my water, and bow, I hit it and my shit went numb. And I was like, uh-oh, did I break it? He was good, and he's always good, man. And I don't treat him right, and I don't deserve him. I really don't, because I do a lot of wicked shit to my pinky toe. And he always bounces back like, oh, I'm good. Don't worry about me. I'll be all right. I did it to him again. Got out of the shower, and I was walking out of the bathroom, and the door was cracked open enough for me to walk out, but not all the way open enough for me to just casually walk out nonchalantly. Like, I needed to avoid the door to get out of the bathroom. I walked full speed with no apprehension, no recognition of the fact that the door is still not as open as it should be for me to just walk through casually, and bow, I hit my damn pinky toe again. This time, my shit's, it got swollen, the nail turned black, and the whole next day, it felt like my pinky toe and the toe next to it would join together. That's how swollen it was. And I don't have enough words to describe the amount of sorrow I felt for my pinky toe, and how sorry I was for continuing to put him through this agony that for no reason other than just negligence, pure negligence on my part. I've turned this man into the laughing stock of my foot, because, you know, your pinky toe is usually already in rough shape from a nail standpoint anyway. Like, all the rest of my nails look pristine, right? Because I always wear socks. So my toes look immaculate. And then there's the pinky toe. And he looks like he doesn't belong to my foot because I keep doing this type of nonsense to him. Anyway, I digress. I feel bad. I had to get my life together. How was your weekend? Hopefully your weekend was outstanding. NBA season has come to a close. And this thing is as wide open as I can remember. The East feels like it's the Celtics to lose, right? But does anybody trust Boston? I don't. However, they're so far ahead of the rest of the East, and they've added really useful pieces this year, including Drew Holiday, who they've already signed to an extension. It makes me feel comfortable that they're going to take care of business out East, make it to the finals, and then we'll see what happens. They've put in their work. They've taken their lumps. If they're healthy, they should represent the East. I don't really see a team out there unless Milwaukee gets their act together and they just don't play enough defense. When you trade away Drew Holiday and you try to replace him with what's the little point guard name that has his own podcast? I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. I can see his damn face. And then he got injured. But when you try to replace him with that, and then you bring in Dame, who doesn't play that much defense, this is to be expected. Like, I don't know what people thought was going to happen when you trade one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. I don't know what you were expecting, but this is what you get. You made your bed, now you have to lie in it, right? So, yeah, Pat Bev. Thank you, Meest. Pat Beverly, you trade for Pat? I mean, you go and get Pat Beverly and you think you're solving something. You're not. And so they find themselves in a really tough spot. I don't buy into anybody else out East. It's unfortunate what happened to the 76ers because that was the only team that I thought could give them a run for their money with the acquisitions that they have made, bringing in Buddy Hield and getting what's that? Kelly Oubre, right? I thought they had done enough to put pieces around Joel to give them a chance to compete, and then Joel gets hurt. Now you're trying to reintegrate him back in as the playoffs get underway. It's a tough situation to be in. Now they're in the play-in tournament. I expect them to emerge from it, but still, damage is done. You know, their path to getting where they ultimately want to go is going to be a lot harder now if they are to take care of business. But I just see it being Boston. I don't trust them. Okay, I don't trust the Celtics. But we'll see. I just don't see anybody else really challenging them out East. But we'll see what happens. The West is where it's at, right? This is going to be the competitive. I mean, even a play-in on the East side of the bracket isn't all that compelling, right? The West is crazy. So OKC is your number one seed, which what a season they've turned in, but they're not ready to win a chip, right? This is their first time showing up to the postseason. I'm hoping they get the Lakers. Man, I am praying because I can't stand OKC, and not because they've done anything to me, just because they're the new kids on the block, and I'm a Grizzlies fan, and that's my role, that's my title, and because we call it a gap year because of all the injuries that we had this year, they took our spot. They're like, okay, you don't want it, we'll take it. And they're young, they're talented, they've got the best GM in basketball, and they're strapped with picks for days upon days. They've got plenty of cap space because they build internally. They're set to make a run at this thing and be the new Warriors if the rest of this thing kind of falls into place for them. But you don't just show up and win a chip. That's not how it works in the NBA. So they got to take their lumps. And I'm praying that the Lakers are the ones that give it to them in the first round, because if somehow, and I don't like asking teams like the Pelicans. I don't like asking teams like the Pellies to do my dirty work for me. I don't trust them, right? I need them to beat the Lakers, get the 7 seed, and then have the Lakers defeat whomever comes out of that 9-10 matchup, more likely than not the Warriors. Or it could be the Warriors, but I'm pretty sure OKC would dispose of the Warriors pretty easily, I feel like. It's hard to kill a champ, though. But I want to be the one that puts the Warriors out. Like, I'm the one that's supposed to be the torch bearer, right? If they're going to be put out to the pasture, we were the ones that were supposed to do it, not OKC. I need the Lakers to get them, because if the Lakers get them, I think the Lakers can beat their ass, just like they beat us last year in the first round as a 7 seed. I think we can beat. I think the Lakers can beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, because the playoffs are a much different animal, right? And you know, SGA is used to getting to the line 47 times a game, and Chet Holmgren looks like he could use a couple of meals still. And I just don't know if they're ready for the physicality that comes with the NBA playoffs quite yet. And they're going to find out. I think they're going to F around and find out if it's LA. If it's the Pellies, they're going to bust those clowns up. If it's the Warriors, I think they get by. But it'll be a little bit of a struggle, because Golden State's not going to lie down for them. But I think they're too talented for Golden State at this point of their career and their run. But the Nuggets are still dangerous. But we'll see if they got enough to get back to the Western Conference Finals. I don't know if they do or not. I don't know. And then the Timberwolves, they were another one of those teams that was a bit of a surprise. But Anthony Edwards is him. Like, if you're talking about the guy that looks like he could be the next big thing in the league, and the guy that is the face of the NBA, Anthony Edwards could be that dude. And he's taken a massive step this year. And even without Cat for a large chunk of this season, they still were one of the best teams in the West. We'll see what happens with them. Phoenix has had a pretty disappointing season, but they seem to be getting their act together at the right time, I guess. Clippers and the Mavs, I kind of feel the same about both of those teams. If they're healthy, they're locked in, they're dangerous, but you really don't know what you're going to get, right? Kawhi is never healthy. When he is, he's one of the best playoff basketball players in the league currently. When he's the locked in playoff basketball, forget about it. You can't stop him, right? But he's never healthy. Same with Kyrie. And if Kyrie's healthy, the Mavs are dangerous. But Kyrie always finds a way to get hurt in the playoffs. So I feel the same way about both of those teams. I don't know if I trust either of them to stay healthy to finish the job. But the NBA got what they wanted, because they wanted a chance for both the LA Lakers and LeBron James and the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry to be in the playoffs. And they have that opportunity. Being that the Lakers beat the Pellies in the final game of the regular season to secure the 8th seed, it allowed LA to stay out of that 9-10 matchup with Golden State. And meaning that one of them would have to be eliminated in that 9-10 game, right? Now, the Lakers could beat the Pellies, which I think they're going to do, which is going to piss me off, because I want the Lakers to play OKC in round one, because I know they can beat them. And instead, the Lakers are going to get a rematch of the Western Conference Finals, and I don't think they're good enough to beat the Nuggets. But that's nor here nor there. Whatever the case may be, if the Lakers win in the 7-8 matchup, they're in. And then if the Warriors win, and I think they're going to beat the Kings just have too many injuries. They have too many injuries to key players to make a run at anything. And so I think the Warriors are going to take care of the Kings like they did in the postseason last year. And then I think they can beat the Pellies. And if they beat the Pellies, boom, you got both LeBron and Steph in the playoffs. And that's what the NBA wants. You want the best draw. You want the best opportunity for ratings to keep people interested. You need Steph Curry. You need LeBron James in the postseason. And they have a chance to get both of them. The likelihood is you'll get at least one of the two. There's a realistic shot that you get both. I think you're going to get both, but we'll see what happens. The Lakers just beat the Pellies on Sunday. Now they have to do it again. I know they're fully capable of doing it again, but we'll see. My wish is, if I get what I want, then both can't make it, right? Because the Pellies would beat the Lakers, and then the Lakers would beat whoever wins from out of the Kings Warriors matchup. And the Warriors are not a good matchup for the Lakers. So again, we'll see what happens. But the West is very intriguing. A lot of really interesting matchups. But ultimately, we want to see what happens with LeBron and what happens with Steph Curry and the Warriors and LeBron and the Lakers. That'll determine the level of interest in this first round, right? If neither one of them are in, yeah, it's all right. The playoffs are much better when LeBron and the Lakers are in it. The playoffs are much better when Steph and the Warriors are in it. And so I know the NBA is hoping that those two teams take care of business, but we will see. We'll talk more about the playoffs probably Wednesday, like actually, predicting what's going to happen. I'll tell you this, as I already said about the East side, it's Boston's conference to lose, right? On the West side of the bracket, it's anybody's game, but I still think you got to go with championship pedigree. So I think it's still Denver. I think it's the Clippers. It's the Mavs, teams that have done it, that have been to the conference finals before. And dark horse teams, obviously Lakers and the Warriors, if they get in. But the Pellies aren't, ready to do anything. The Kings, I don't think, are going to even make the playoffs. And I don't think the Timberwolves are ready, and neither are the OKC Thunder. I just think those teams are relatively young. Minnesota has a little bit more playoff experience. They've been before. Anthony Edwards has been before, and so they've tasted the postseason. They've taken their lumps. They may be ready to win a series. Not going to be easy because the Suns have a veteran team, but they just got 3 guys. So it's going to be tough because you're going to literally be asking that big 3 to probably average 85 points a game together combined. And that's tough for any big 3, let alone a big 3 that has struggled to stay healthy and is wildly inconsistent as a trio, right? Beal is stepping his game up here of late, though. He's starting to get into the zone, which is what they need, because we already know what Book is capable of. We already know what KD is capable of. Beal is the X factor, and if he decides to go 1 of 8 from deep, or he decides to go 0 of 4 from deep and 1 of 11 shooting, they don't stand a chance, because, like I said, they've got to score probably 80 to 90 points between the 3 of them if they are to have a chance, because they just don't have any other guys that can really score the basketball. They're not a very deep basketball team. And you got Yusuf Nurkic, but I mean, he's Yusuf Nurkic. Take it for what it's worth. So that'll be a fascinating matchup with Minnesota and the Suns. But my money's on the Suns advancing there, and then we'll see what happens after that. But anyway, I digress. So let's get to our gem dropping session today, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up, get you thinking a little bit. So before we even get like knee deep into everything, the Eagles re-signed Devonta Smith on a 3-year, $75 million extension. Man, do I hate Howie Roseman and the Eagles with a passion. But I'm one that gives credit where credit is due. He's done a hell of a job. There's going to be misses. Everybody misses. People get hung up on the Justin Jefferson miss, and instead they drafted the receiver from TCU. It happens. All right. Everybody, lays an egg every once in a while, but they hit way more than they miss in Philadelphia. And a great sign of hitting is when you have the pleasure, because that's what it really is, of re-signing one of your own. That means you did it right. That means you got it right. And every time we look up, it feels like the Eagles are extending one of their own. They just got Jordan Mailata done. Now they're getting Devonta Smith done. They got Jalen Hurts done last offseason. And they just continue to get it right. And a lot of their guys hang around for years and years. Lane Johnson and Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham, because they get it right. And when you get it right and you have guys that are around for as long as those guys have been and had been, you build a culture that allows you to do what the Eagles have done here of late. And so hats off to the Eagles organization. I won't be doing this very often. They can kick rocks, but Devonta Smith is a damn good receiver. You could argue that on most NFL football teams, he's a number one wide receiver. He's on one of the few teams where he's not a number one, and you could argue it's a 1A, 1B situation in Philadelphia with him and A.J. Brown. But damn, he's good, and he kicks our ass every time we see him, it feels like. So kudos to Devonta Smith for getting the extension. Well-deserved. I remember so many people questioned whether this guy would be a baller at the next level because of his size. And I remember saying, I have no doubts about what this guy is going to do at the NFL level. He's a dog, and he's been every bit of it since being drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. 3 drafts ago now, it feels like. He's been really, really good. So let's get to the proceedings this evening and jump into my gym dropping session. And it has to do with the NFL draft and the first round in particular. So I've been talking about the first round because it's the biggest round and it's the one that we hype up the most, and for good reason, because it's going to be the one that's the most celebrated. It's going to be the most talked about, and you're going to more likely than not get the most impactful players from the first round. So upon saying all of that, I've talked about the very fickle nature of the first round and how we see trades all the time take place. Some drafts more than others. I think this is going to be a first round where the activity level could be very high because of the amount of quarterbacks, 1, and 2, the ability to see maybe a player or 2 slip, and that would garner intrigue from teams that may be in the rear to come up and potentially get a guy that they didn't think would end up in their wheelhouse. So I think you could see some movement in this first round, and you will, right? How much, we'll see, but there are certain spots that are just hotter, piping hot, hotter than the rest, right? And there are at least 3 or 4 that I just look at and I say, without question, these are going to be hot spots that if these teams are open for business, deals will get done, right? In past years, we've seen trades already take place prior to the draft even getting started. We've had one of those already with the Houston Texans trading out of the first round, allowing the Minnesota Vikings to acquire a second first-round pick to give them more ammunition to potentially get into the top 5 to get a quarterback. With that said, we've seen drafts where we've seen 3 or 4 trades already taking place. Back in 2021, we'd already seen like 3 trades take place, right? If I'm not mistaken, the Dolphins had moved back, and then the Eagles had moved back, and then the 49ers had moved up, and then the Eagles moved back up or something like that. It was craziness, pure chaos before the draft even got started to position yourself to get guys, as things kind of unfolded. So we're not having that level of activity heading into the draft, but I think once the clock starts and the Bears are officially on the clock around 8:02 or so on Thursday night, April 25th, I do think we're going to see some activity. And again, one of the things that's going to drive this activity is what happens, right? What player is selected. I think if the Commanders pass on Jaden Daniels, I think shit gets real. I think teams get even more aggressive. To me, the crown jewel of the top 3 is Jaden Daniels. That's the guy that I think that teams like the Vegas Raiders, for instance, are salivating over and would do anything to come up and get, right? They would give you just about anything you're asking for to get their hands on a guy like Jaden Daniels. Daniels has made no secrets. He'd love to play for the Vegas Raiders. He has a, excellent relationship with Antonio Pierce, the head coach of the Vegas Raiders, who was at Arizona State at the same time that Jaden Daniels was. So they have a tremendous relationship. It's on the West Coast, which is where Jaden Daniels is from. So there's a lot to love about that situation for him. But if Washington were to pass on Jaden Daniels and go with Drake May, it put the Patriots in a great spot to trade out of 3. They're already in a spot that if they wanted to move, they could. But I think it gets even hotter if Jaden Daniels is available. But if you're New England, do you pass on Jaden Daniels yourself, right? Which that's a whole different discussion to have. But for me, where the real intrigue, because I've said this already, as much as we could talk about and have talked about the first 3 picks in the draft and what these teams are going to do, are they going to stand pat? Are they going to trade back? The likelihood is they all stay where they're at and take a quarterback. So I don't see Chicago trading out of the pick. We all know what they're going to do. They've already essentially announced with the trading of Justin Fields what their intentions were at number 1. So they're going to take Caleb Williams. The draft really starts at number 2 with Washington. And right now the assumption is Jaden Daniels is the pick. He's currently in Washington right now with an official 30 visit with the Commanders. Spent all day with them today. We'll do the same tomorrow. They'll also entertain Drake May this week. And I think they're also going to have J.J. McCarthy at some point there in Washington too. So this is going to be a big-time decision for all the teams that are taking quarterback. Obviously, when you take quarterback this high, it is a franchise-altering decision. But I expect the Commanders to take a quarterback. I expect the Patriots to take quarterback. And I think the first spot that you look at and say, we got a chance to have some action is number 4 with the Arizona Cardinals. I almost feel like it's a lock that the Cardinals are going to trade out of this pick. Now, I've already said a bunch of times that the Cardinals have an intriguing decision to make because they themselves could use a difference-making receiver. We saw the impact that a Larry Fitzgerald had on that organization, and you're in a position to get another one of those types of players. So do you pass on the opportunity to get yourself, because you don't need the draft capital, okay? Like it'll be great to get you another first-round pick next year or, a second-round pick next year and an extra first-rounder this year. But you already got 2 first-round picks this year. How many first-rounders do you need this year? Trading back will get you a 3rd first-rounder this year, right? Because you already have 2. You'll move out of 4, but you'll keep 27. More likely than not, you're trading with Minnesota, which will get you 11 and 23. You'll have 3 first-round picks. How many picks do you need in the first round, right? So while it's intriguing and enticing, I think it's more important if you're Arizona to get the game-changing receiver to pair with your quarterback, Kyler Murray, who you're invested in, and you still have 27, right? And if you want to trade out of the first round, that'll be an opportunity for you to do so. But you can also get whatever you feel like you need to get with the 27th pick. If you need something else, you can do that and not trade the 4th pick overall. But I think it's going to be too enticing of an opportunity for the second-year GM Ossenfort to pass up, right? You're still remodeling that roster. You're still putting your stamp and imprint on the Cardinals organization and roster. And what better and faster way to do so than to trade back, pick up 2 more first-rounders, make it 3 for you in the first round, and you'll still be within striking distance potentially of, Rome Odunze or whomever is left of the 3 big receivers. But I say that, but you're not going to get him at 11. You'd have to trade. If you're Arizona, you could theoretically trade out of 4, then package up 2 of these 3 first rounders to go back up to get your receiver, right? Like, that's not out of the realm of possibility. If you're Arizona, and because here's the thought process, and let's just say this right now. Let's get this out of the way so we can continue to focus on Arizona. If the Cardinals decide to make a selection, which it'll be a receiver at 4, and more likely than not, it'll be Marvin Harrison Jr. If they decide to stay at 4 and take a receiver, then 5 becomes an immediate hot spot, the hottest spot in the draft, right? Immediately, because again, until 4 quarterbacks have been selected, every pick is a hot pick, and it's the hottest pick in the draft, and it's the hottest spot in the draft until that 4th quarterback comes off the board. At that point, once that 4th quarterback comes off the board, things simmer down a bit, okay? Things will simmer down, but that's going to happen in the first 5 picks. Either the first 4 picks in the draft are quarterbacks, or the first 4 out of 5 are quarterbacks. There's no way that the Cardinals and the Chargers pass up an opportunity to pick up multiple picks and don't move back, especially Arizona, if you ask me, because even if you're Arizona, you could trade out of 4. Now, again, you forfeit the right to select whichever receiver you like by doing that, more likely than not. But you still have 3 first-round picks. You could easily package up 2 of those to get back into the top 10 and get your guy. You probably wouldn't have to even package up 2 of your first-round picks. You could give up 1, swap the first-rounders, 11, and probably toss in a 3rd, a 2nd, or a 3rd, whatever, makes the point value chart make sense, because you're not going up that far, right? You'll be at 11, and let's say Tennessee's sitting there at 7, or Chicago, who's already said that they are interested in moving out of that pick potentially. Because the Titans and the Falcons aren't taking receivers, okay? Because the Titans signed Calvin Ridley in free agency, and they still have DeAndre Hopkins, they're not spending a first-round pick on a receiver. They're going to more likely than not go tackle. They'll be the first team to select an offensive tackle in this draft. That's the likelihood, right? Falcons probably going to go corner or edge rusher here at 8. They're not looking for a receiver. They've got plenty of receivers. And again, another team that added a free agent wide receiver, them adding the ex-Chicago Bear receiver, Darnell Mooney, puts them out of the wide receiver sweepstakes, right? So you're not going, you could see, and in my mind, how this is going to go down is Arizona is going to trade out of 4 with Minnesota, obviously. Vikings come up and they get whomever's left, more likely than not, J.J. McCarthy, at 4, right? The next 2 teams, Chargers and Giants, are going to take receiver, right? Boom, boom. And then tackle here with the Titans. Falcons are going to take a corner and an edge rusher, one of the 2. And then the Bears are now an intriguing spot, because if you're the Arizona Cardinals and you traded out of 4 and you're sitting there at 11, why not trade with the Bears, who are already said that they're interested in moving back? Swap, just to get in front of the Jets, because the Jets have already made it abundantly clear that 1, they're not taking a quarterback, and 2, they're interested in moving out of the 10th overall pick. I've already said, if you're Buffalo and you're sitting at 28, I would be like already working the phones right now, and I would already have a deal in place with Chicago saying, hey, if you're interested in moving out and our receiver is there, we want to come up. And you already have that deal kind of locked in, unless somebody else comes in, sweetens the pot, and leapfrogs you with a better offer, and then you got to step your game up and maybe go up with an offer, or you just let it go. If I'm the Buffalo Bills, I'm doing everything in my power to try to go get that receiver, because again, your window of opportunity is open if you're Buffalo, but it's rapidly closing. And in order to open it back up, you need to go get one of these receivers. No other receiver out of the top 3, I believe, is going to help you in year 1. Now, again, one of these other guys, Adonai Mitchell, may turn into a stud 2-3 years from now. He might be viewed as one of the better receivers out of this draft class. It won't be in year 1, though, right? Not like the top 3, right? So for me, I'm looking at Arizona moving back. That almost feels like a given at this point. And I don't want to assume anything because they may be enamored with the idea of adding Marvin Harrison Jr., feeling like we're getting Larry Fitzgerald all over again. And we can't pass that up. And I wouldn't blame them if they felt that way. And if they do, then the Chargers at 5 becomes the hottest pick in the draft, the hottest spot, because at that point, Minnesota then turns all of their attention directly to the Chargers and says, what do you want? What do we have to do to get up? Because remember, if the Chargers don't trade this pick and they make a selection as well, the Giants are taking a quarterback at that point. They're not going to pass on quarterback. The Giants are prepared to not take a quarterback because they don't expect a quarterback to be available at 6. They'd have to move up to 4 themselves, and they just don't have the draft capital. If you're going to do this deal, if you're Arizona, you're going to do the deal with Minnesota, as I've already mentioned, right? You're not going to do the deal with the Giants because while on one hand, moving back 2 spots ensures that you're going to get one of those top 3 receivers, you're not going to get the value out of the pick that you will if you trade back with Minnesota, right? So that's something to consider, though. If Arizona's like, wow, we love the value of doing business with Minnesota because we're going to get 2 first-rounders this year and also probably get a first-rounder, if not a first, a second-rounder next year, it puts us out of the position that we need to be in to get one of these receivers, and we just don't want to pass up that opportunity. So you could do business with the Giants instead, which would allow you to still pick up that first-round pick next year or a second-round pick next year, et cetera, whatever you're looking for to move back 2 spots, but it also keeps you in a position to get one of those receivers. You then look at the next hot spot to me, and it's Chicago at 9, as I've mentioned already. Chicago at 9, I think if this, and I've already kind of explained this to you, but I'll go through it again. It's not hard to kind of put all of the pieces of this puzzle together to kind of see how things could shake out and why Chicago at 9 after Arizona at 4 becomes the hottest spot in the draft for a trade, because the Bears are going to take Caleb Williams. The Commanders are going to take a quarterback, probably going to be Jaden Daniels. The Patriots are going to take a quarterback. More likely than not, it's going to be Drake May. Could be J.J. McCarthy. Who knows? Whatever the case may be, whatever one doesn't get selected, Minnesota wants him. They're like, at this point, we don't care. It could be J.J. McCarthy. They'd prefer Drake May. It doesn't matter to them. We got to go get us a quarterback, and we feel good about both of those guys. So whatever happens, we just need to get here, right? 4 or 5, doesn't matter. We just need to get to one of these selections to ensure that we get one of those quarterbacks. So the likelihood is Arizona moves out of the way, allows Minnesota to come up. They go back to 11. All right, so J.J. McCarthy's now off the board here. Chargers say, okay, cool. We're no longer a hot spot, so you remove their arrow. They're no longer a hot spot, so they're going to take receiver. You can't trade Keenan Allen and release Mike Williams and just say, well, it's a deep wide receiver draft class. Bullshit. Get you one of these dudes and stop playing. So that's what they're going to do. Giants are like, look, we're not going to force the issue at quarterback. We're just good. We got Daniel Jones again this year, under contract. We got to pay him anyway. We don't have to do anything rash. Let's just we don't have any top flight receivers. We're the only team in the division that doesn't have one. Let's just get one. That's what they're going to do. So quarterback, receiver. You get to Tennessee, as I mentioned already, why they wouldn't take a receiver, because they've already done work in the offseason to take care of that position by signing Calvin Ridley. They're not taking a receiver. They're going to take a tackle, more likely than not, Joe Alt. 8, Atlanta. They're going to take an edge rusher or a cornerback, right? They need both. And whichever one they deem to be the most pertinent here and the best value, that's what they're probably going to do. My money's on the edge rusher, but we'll see what they decide to do. More likely than not, edge rusher goes here at 8. 9 then becomes the hottest of spots because the Bears have already said, hey, we're open. Doesn't mean we're going to trade the pick, but we're open for business. Bears don't need a receiver. Obviously, they have DJ Moore coming off of his best season of his career. They traded for Keenan Allen. They've done enough at that position. And I think they added another receiver too. They've done plenty at wide receiver. They don't need to do another thing at receiver. So that's why they're interested in trading this pick, because whatever they're looking for, they can get moving back, right? They don't have to select it here at 9. And that's why I said a team like Buffalo makes a ton of sense. Hell, even a team like the Arizona Cardinals, who I just said traded back to 11, could jump back in front of New York and go to 9. And there could be other teams that see the value in getting that third and final big time receiver. And so this pick is going to become massive. And what we've seen from the GM of the Chicago Bears is that he is a forward thinker, much like Howie Roseman, from the standpoint of, I'm going to continue to keep my future wide open by continuing to kick that can down the road, so to speak. And because the Bears have had like 2 first-round picks each of the last 2 seasons, or drafts rather, they could do it again, right? By trading back from 9. If they do business with Buffalo, they're going to get another first-round pick because of how far back they would have to travel. Now, if you do business with Arizona, you're not getting a first-round pick next year for moving back 2 spots. But you will have assets again at your disposal next year, whether that's a second or a third-round pick next year, or it's another pick in this year's draft, right? The likelihood is it'll be a pick in this year's draft, and it'll probably be like a third-round pick or something like that to move back 2 spots. But what they've effectively done is they've stayed strapped with draft capital. And moving back from 9 to, say, 28 keeps you in that boat where you're going to have 2 first-round picks again next year. And that's where you want to be, right? Once you strike a deal that puts you in a position to have 2 first-round picks, if you don't need to spend both of them, flip one of them to ensure that the next year you have 2 first-round picks again. And that's what they've done in Chicago. And I could see them doing it again here at number 9, because if you don't trade 9, then the Jets at 10 become the hottest of spots, because, again, you got to get in front of Arizona. Right? You have to get it, because Arizona is definitely taking a receiver. And you're going to get 2. Is there going to be 2 races in the top 10? 2 races. The first race is who can get to the 4th quarterback first. That's race number 1. Who's going to win the race to the number 4 pick or the number 5 pick to get J.J. McCarthy? And that's going to be the Minnesota Vikings, I believe. Okay. Then the second big race in the top 10 is who's going to get to that 3rd receiver. Somebody's going to get to that 3rd receiver, because the Chargers and the Giants are going to take the first 2. Bang and boom, right? It's bing, bang, and then who's going to get to the boom? Because the Chargers are bing, the Giants are bang. Who's going to get to the boom of that trio of receivers? And again, there are a lot of teams that could use that receiver. The 49ers could use that receiver if they're planning on trading Brandon Ayuk. The Steelers are desperate for a receiver. You see that they're sniffing around Brandon Ayuk, right? So that means that they're in the wide receiver market, clearly. Okay. Nobody should be more desperate than the Buffalo Bills. I will actually be disappointed in Brandon Beane if he does not make a move, or if they don't get it, right, and somebody else comes up and it's not Buffalo. I need to hear that the Bills were aggressively pursuing 9 and they just didn't have enough capital. They weren't willing to go to the length of whatever the team that ultimately got there went. Okay, I can understand that. You draw a line in the sand and you say, hey, I'm not going any higher than this. This is what I'm offering. If somebody's got a better package, take it. Pause. But I better hear that the Bills were aggressively trying to go up, or else then to me, you're not serious about winning a chip if you don't. Because I hear people all the time talking about, well, look at what the Chiefs did. Let me stop you right there, because the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes. They got the ultimate cheat code. Nobody else in the league has that. So unless you have that, you better be trying to go get as much ammunition as you can to compete with the Chiefs in the cheat code known as Patrick Mahomes. You don't have that. You better be doing everything in your power to stack the deck in your favor. Because with Patrick Mahomes, the deck is always slanted in the favor of the Chiefs, period. So you got to do everything in your power to try to get what you have to get to put yourself in a position to beat Kansas City. And if you're Buffalo, you don't have enough, and drafting, sitting and waiting at 28 to see what falls into your lap isn't good enough. Sorry, not sorry. Somebody's going to come up and get this pick off Chicago, I believe. If assuming that the third receiver is still there, I have no reason to believe that that third receiver still, won't be there, because I don't see Tennessee trading out of 7. I'm not saying that they won't. I don't see Atlanta trading out of 8. I'm not saying that they won't. But I don't see, like, if you're Atlanta, I think Tennessee is more likely to trade out of 7 than Atlanta is. Here's why. If you're Atlanta and you go get Kirk Cousins, you're in win now mode. You don't have time to bullshit around, playing around with the idea of trading back and picking up assets for the future. Your future is now. You signed Kirk Cousins to a massive deal, which means you're pushing your chips to the table, center of the table. Right now, you're all in. And if you're all in, you need to be improving this team the best way you can. And at 8, you have a chance to get an elite edge rusher to help that offense get better field position, get off the field on third downs, create turnovers in short fields. You got to take advantage of that. The Titans, on the other hand, you got Will Levis. You want to find out if he's any good, you need to protect him. So I don't see them moving off of 7 because they're going to look to protect Will Levis. And I don't see the Falcons moving out of 8 because they need to stack the deck in their favor, because they went out and they signed Kirk Cousins to a very lucrative contract. So with that said, 9 becomes that spot. The Bears aren't winning anything anytime soon. They've already spent resources on the offensive line. So while they could still do that in this draft, they don't have to do it at 9. They traded for Montez Sweat last year, signed him to an extension that looks very team-friendly after seeing the deals that have been handed out this offseason to Brian Burns and to Josh Allen. That deal that Montez Sweat got looks like chump change now, right? So the Bears are winning, right? You already re-signed Jalen Johnson, so you don't need a corner. You don't need an edge rusher. So you don't need to make a selection here at 9, to be honest with you. You don't need a tight end. So Brock Bowers isn't the answer, because you got a budding star at the tight end position already out of Notre Dame. And so you don't have to do anything at 9 if you're Chicago. The urgency isn't there for them like it is Atlanta. It's not there for them like it is for Buffalo. So for me, Chicago probably going to be willing to move off this pick. Their GM has been outstanding and continuing to keep the Bears in a position to have extra capital so that if they want to trade for Montez Sweat because they got an extra second-round pick, they can do that, right? This will put them in a position to do it again, right, next year. If they want to do something like that in season to improve their roster, they can do that. They've traded for a second-round pick 2 years in a row. They traded for Chase Claypool. That didn't work out so well. And then they traded for Montez Sweat, and that did work out very well for them. So they've already shown the ability to be proactive and aggressive in going after players at the trade deadline. You set yourself up to do that yet again by trading out of 9. So I think 4 and 9 are the 2 hottest spots in the top 10, if you ask me. If the Bears don't trade out of 9 and they make a selection, it won't be wide receiver. More likely than not, it could be. All right, it could be. But you already got Keenan Allen. You already have DJ Moore. I highly doubt that it's going to be wide receiver. So then the Jets at 10 become a massive hot spot, right? So the next hot spot for me after that is 23. And whether it's Minnesota still there because they weren't able to get a deal done with Arizona or the Chargers, which I find that highly unlikely. They're going to make a deal, and I think they're going to get their quarterback. But I think this is going to ultimately be Arizona here at 23. And if you're at 23 and you're the Cardinals and you still have 27 at your disposal and you've already made a selection at 11, or you've traded back up to number 9 and you made a selection, whatever the case may be, you're not giving up 23 or 27 to go up 2 spots. So you're going to still have these 2 first-round picks no matter what happens if you trade back to 11. And if you try to get back up to 9 to get in front of the Jets to ensure that you get that receiver, Rome Odunze, more likely than not is who it'll be, you're not giving up either one of these first-rounders. So you're still intact, right? To me, 23 it becomes the next hottest spot. Now, I'm not saying that a trade can't happen between 9 and 23 because, the Eagles are wheelers and dealers. The Seahawks hate making first-round picks. They'd love nothing more than to trade back or trade completely out of the first round. Now, they're under new management. There's no more Pete Carroll, so their ideology might shift a bit, right? But we'll see. But I'm not saying that something can't go on here in these, 13, 14 picks between 9 and 23. But the likelihood is you're going to see teams kind of stand pat, make a selection. And I think you get to 23 and somebody's going to fall, right? Somebody's going to fall. Because if you got 4 quarterbacks in the top 5 picks, you got 3 receivers for sure in the top 10, more likely than not. We talk about all these tackles. Well, somebody's going to start taking them, right? And after the seal is popped on the tackle position, more likely than not by the Tennessee Titans, you're going to start to see a run on these tackles, whether the Jets take one at 10, if they stand pat. Because if I feel like if the Bears trade out of 9, then the Jets aren't going to have a trade partner. Their spot you remove this arrow if the Bears make the trade. Now the Jets are no longer a hot spot because that third receiver is no longer there. Unless somebody wants Brock Bowers. And again, maybe Arizona is like, well, shit, we didn't get the receiver. Let's get the tight end, right? Okay. Maybe then the Jets still have, and you put that arrow back, maybe the Jets still have a way out of 10 because somebody wants Brock Bowers and they think Arizona might try to take him. That jives. That makes sense. But honestly speaking, if the Jets don't move, they're taking a tackle. And I know they signed Tyron Smith and they've done some things. They're taking a tackle. That's a 1-year Band-Aid solution. You have a chance to get a guy that can fortify, one side of the field for you at the tackle position. You're going to take that guy if you're the Jets, right? You don't need corner. You don't need edge rusher. You've drafted those in the first round each of the last 2 years. Tackle to me makes the most sense there, right? So you're going to start to see these tackles come off the board, right? I already talked about edge rusher, and you're going to see probably 2 or 3 more of those come off the board. Not to mention 2 or 3 more receivers coming off the board. Not to mention we haven't even talked about cornerback, and 3 of those are at least going to come off the board, you would think, in this span of 2 or 3 of them probably in this span of these 15 picks or so between 9 and 23. So what I'm saying is a guy like Brock Bowers falls, or a guy like Amarius Mims falls, or Olu Fashanu, which I don't think is going to happen, but anything could happen. Somebody's going to fall that has no business falling is essentially what I'm telling you. Because you're going to get those edge rushers that are going to come off the board. You're going to get those cornerbacks that start to come off the board. You're going to get more receivers coming off the board. You're going to get those tackles coming off the board. And it's going to push positions down. It's going to push players down. And somebody's going to be sitting there at 23. That somebody back here at the back end of the first round, or some team outside of the first round who's already made their selection in the first round is sitting there getting antsy and saying, come on, man, we got to go get him, right? He's not going to fall much further than this. And Arizona, if you've got 3 first-round picks, you don't need all 3 of them. One of them they're going to trade. They're not going to be the Raiders from like 3-4 years ago that made 3 first-round selections. That's stupid to me. You should never – I don't think there's ever a situation where you should be making 3 picks in 1 round in the first round of any draft, right? If you've got 3 picks, you should be aiming to trade one of them because you need to maximize the value of that pick. And trading one of them keeps you in a position to have the gift that keeps on giving. That's what you should be aiming for. If you're Arizona, because I think that's who's going to ultimately occupy this 23rd pick, because they're going to trade back with Minnesota. This is the one that I think is going to be the most intriguing, because somebody's going to fall right into this range. Okay. Somebody, whether it's a tackle, whether it's Brock Bowers, whether it's a receiver that you don't know is going to last much longer and you need him. If you're Buffalo, somebody's going to want to come up here, right? Somebody's going to want to come up here and make a selection. This, to me, becomes the next hottest spot after the Bears at 9 and Arizona at 4. And then just to wrap up, if they don't trade 23, the Cardinals don't. Let's say they say, hey, there's a guy here that we feel like, because you could at 11 bypass Brock Bowers and then come back at 23 and he's still sitting there. That could happen. I don't think it will happen. Somebody will take him before he gets to you, but don't rule it out. And they may say, well, we were thinking about taking him at 11, but DJ Humphries, we just released him, so we needed a tackle, so we took a tackle at 11. We didn't think Brock Bowers would still be here at 23. We're not trading this pick. You must be outside your damn mind. But we'll trade 27, though. Somebody might be itching to come back into the first round. This is, to me, back of the first round, itching to come get a quarterback territory, right? Maybe one of those tackles is still available, highly unlikely. Maybe the tackle position is getting a little thin for your liking, and there's been a run on tackles, and, a guy like Tyler Guyton is still left, but one of these last 4 teams, in the back end of they're going to take Tyler Guyton's ass. If you don't get up here, he's not going to be there. Right? Or Jordan Morgan. Man, they ravaged the tackle position. And Jordan Morgan is the last one of these tackles that's worth, taking in the top 35 picks. And you say, hey, we better go get his ass now. Because if we don't take him, it's a steep drop off to the next group of tackles in this draft. And so I think either Arizona's coming off at 23, obviously assuming that they trade from 4 back to 11 and 23. They're going to come off of 23, or they're going to come off of 27. And even if there is no deal with Minnesota and Minnesota stuck with 11 and 23, I still think Minnesota, who only traded into the first round to build up their ammunition, I think they're interested in trading this pick. They only came into the back into the first round again to arm themselves with enough ammunition that if somebody were interested to, moving out of the top 5 so that they could get their quarterback, they were already strapped and armed, ready for bear. They were already in a position. So if they're disappointed and they don't get their man, they may be like, we don't need this damn pick. We didn't want this pick. We wanted this because this was going to get us the guy that we ultimately wanted. So they may still be interested in trading out of the first round, with this second first round pick. So to me, 23 is going to be a hot spot no matter what. If there is spillage, as I like to call it, if there is spillage, 23 is going to be a hot spot. If there isn't spillage, then I think that moves to 27. Somebody will want to come up for various reasons. To me, this is where you probably look to get that quarterback that fell, because I'm telling you right now, and we're going to talk about this here in a second to wrap up this gym dropping session. I'm telling you, this expectation that we're going to get 5, potentially 6 quarterbacks in the first round, ain't happening, buddy. So a report came out. Remember, it's Lions season. Y'all know how this goes, but I'm going to say it anyway. Believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man Louie T. Y'all know what this is. Y'all know how this works. So anything you read or hear about this time of the year, take it with a grain of salt. I truly believe the Raiders, if they cannot trade up and get Jaden Daniels or someone of that ilk, they're going to stay at 13, same with Denver, and they're going to make a selection, and it's going to be a non-quarterback selection because the value is not here at 12 or 13. You did not suck last season and put yourself in a position to be the 12th or 13th pick to then squander it on a quarterback that you can potentially get in round 2. That's not the value you're looking for here, right? That's how bad teams or mediocre teams stay mediocre, by reaching for players, right? So the assumption here is that Denver won't select a quarterback. And Vegas, who there's a report that says they're not interested. They'll go corner, or they'll go a different, in a different direction. They desperately need cornerback help. So I think because they signed the defensive tackle from Miami in free agency, so they probably like the way that their defensive line is shaping up now with the kid they drafted last year in the first round out of Texas Tech. And then you still got Max Crosby, obviously, and then you went out and you got what's the Dolphins former Clemson defensive tackle? Christian Wilkins, and they signed him to a massive deal this offseason. So you're probably not looking edge rushy, but you desperately need cornerback help. So this is a spot where I could see corner coming off the board here. And so I don't think you're going to get 5 quarterbacks like everybody just to say, oh, there's 5 quarterbacks, 6 maybe. Nah, you might get that 5th quarterback back here somewhere at 27 with Arizona, or one of these teams back here, San Francisco or Kansas City, trades out of the first round, allow somebody to come back up and get that quarterback. I think Arizona at 27 makes the most sense to me as a spot where you trade back into the first round. But it won't be another quarterback going in the top 13, as we've been talking about for a lot of this period. Again, the Raiders don't have to send a smoke screen about quarterback, because unless they're trying to coax Denver into not taking one so that guy falls to them. But Michael Penix Jr. will be around in the second round. Bo Nix will be around in the second round. So you don't have to. Now, again, here's the wild card. Teams like the Rams or even Dallas, with Dak Prescott's contractual situation, you have to look out for those sleeper teams with veteran quarterbacks who could be on their last legs in those stops. We don't know how much longer Matthew Stafford's going to play. We know that Dallas and Dak are at odds with the new contract. I think he's going to end up staying in Dallas when it's all said and done. He won't get a contract this year, but he may end up being back in Dallas next year. It just costs too much for Dallas to not bring him back next year. But we'll see, right? He signs with someone else next year. It's going to cost them a whole hell of a lot to replace him. And it'll set that franchise back a long ways to me if they, you're kind of stuck, because you're probably not winning anything with Dak, but you damn sure ain't winning anything without him, right? So anyway, all of this is fascinating to me. As you can see, I've spent probably, 40 minutes talking about this or whatever, but all of this is fascinating to me. I don't think you're going to get another quarterback go in the first round unless somebody trades back in towards the back end. If you're the Rams and you're trying to, like Sean McVay and he's shown this throughout the life, him and Trader Les have shown they're not thinking about 5 years down the road, right? We every year we question whether Sean McVay is going to be back or not. Any year could be the year that he decides, I'm ready to go to the booth. I don't want to coach anymore. I got a pretty sweet deal already. I've already won a Super Bowl. I'm young. This shit is stressful. I'm ready to just do the booth thing. I'm already incredibly smart. Everybody knows it. He'll get a job the minute he decides, I don't want to do this anymore. You don't know when that's going to happen. And working and operating in that space, they not drafting a quarterback to sit behind Matthew Stafford at 19. Not when you just lost Aaron Donald. Why not replace him with Byron Murphy, right here, and get you another guy that could act as a de facto Aaron Donald replacement? He's not Aaron Donald. You can't replace that kind of guy, but why not try at 19, right? They're not taking a quarterback. And I don't see Dallas. If they're all in, like Jerry said, My definition of all in and your definition of all in are two different definitions. Sure, Jerry, they damn sure are, because that ain't how I define all in. You can't be all in and drafting Dak Prescott's replacement in the first round. So the likelihood is you're going to get to 27. No other quarterback has been taken other than the 4 guys in the top 5. And if somebody wants to then kick that can, they can, right? Come back in here, get that quarterback. But my guess is 4 quarterbacks go in the first round. Not 5, not 6, 4. Because this is what we do every year, right? When there are a lot of quarterbacks like this, we hype it up. We talk about, oh, XYZ could go. This guy could even go in the first round. We do it all the time. Going all the way back to Geno Smith. We did the same shit with Geno Smith. Geno packed 1 suit because he thought he was going, because everybody hyped him up and told him he was going in the first round. Geno packed 1 suit and then went home. We saw it happen with Will Levis last year. It's going to happen again this year. Neither one of those dudes, Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix, are going in the first round. Anyway, I digress. Let's move on to our next segment here on the show, and that is social media maneuvers. I am a midnight marauder. Y'all know how this works. In case you don't, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air if it is pertinent and time permits. But if you want to ensure that your comment is read and that we address it and talk about it, super chats are the way to get that done. So with that said, let's jump to the comment section and see what you guys are talking about. And we start the night off with Sean Moore. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Sean Moore, writes, what it do, Lou? What's up, Sean? Oh, you want to shoot me in the pinky toe? Yeah, I'm feeling like Della Reese right now, right? I feel like, you shot me in my pinky toe. I'm feeling real Della Reese like, because I for whatever reason, I don't like my pinky toe on my right foot. I don't know what that toe has done to me other than show me unconditional love. But for some reason, I'm not reciprocating that energy to that toe. And I feel really bad about it. I really, truly do. I got to be better, man. I really do. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, JP, writes, my Lakers are really going to win a play-in game over the overrated Pelicans just to get swept by Denver again. Shaking my head. If I were you, I would, like, I said this already. You can't beat Denver. They own you, and they know how to play you, and you don't want that smoke. If you could somehow, and this is the tough part, if you don't beat the Pellies, which I believe you're going to, if you don't beat them, now you got to deal with the Warriors, because I think they're going to beat the Kings. And they just went to your house and smacked you around, probably a week ago, if not like 4 or 5 days ago. They just went there. Draymond went off, hit 5 threes in the first half, and I don't know if you can beat the Warriors or not. Not saying that you can't, but probably not going to. But if you could somehow make it to the 8th seed, you could beat OKC. That's the very unfortunate part about all of this, is you're capable of beating OKC. I don't think you're going to be, and you know this as a Lakers fan, like you just said, you think they're going to, I don't think you're going to get swept. I don't think you'll get swept, but you're not going to beat the Denver Nuggets if they're healthy. So I would love nothing more than you to get OKC, but the path to getting to the 8 seed is rough. Because then you got to go through Golden State. And I just don't like having to go through a team that is as battle tested as Golden State. I'm good. Thanks. I'll pass. You know, they want nothing more than to get in the playoffs. Now, if they get mopped once they get there, so be it. But they damn sure don't want to miss. When's the last time a healthy Golden State team, and they're healthy, right? Yeah, they're old, but they're healthy. When's the last time a healthy Golden State team didn't make the playoffs? We've seen years where they were battered and bruised. Steph was carrying the load by himself. I remember we beat them in the play-in about 4 years ago, but that was Steph by himself, Steph and Draymond. There was no Clay, okay? We know they had a gap year where Clay, Steph, Draymond, everybody was out. But when they're all healthy, they don't miss the playoffs. So you know they want to do nothing more than make the playoffs, even if it's to get mopped by OKC in the first round. They want in. So I'd hate to have to go through them. You're going to take care of the Pellies. Then the Pellies are probably going to get taken care of by the Warriors. And I think you guys are going to be the 7 seed and the Warriors are going to be the 8 seed. That's what it looks like. But I don't know. We'll see. Kevin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Kevin writes, with 11 picks, I think we trade up. Also, my King season is beyond over. No way the basketball gods let us get through Curry and Bron. I hate this team. I hate the fact that you've incurred injuries at the worst time of the season. Just about 2 weeks ago, maybe 2.5 weeks ago, my Grizzlies had you on the ropes, and literally a guy that I was eyeballing because he's going to be a free agent this offseason. I can't afford him though, but I still was looking at Malik Monk out of the side of my eye like, hey, what's up, Malik? I heard you're going to be a free agent this summer. He went off on our ass, took over the game, scored just about every single point in overtime and single-handedly beat us. He gets hurt. And at that point, I was like, yeah, you guys, it ain't enough here without Malik Monk coming off the bench. There's no way you're getting into playoffs because I shouldn't say that. You made it seem as if you beat Golden State, then you got to get Bron. They're going to beat the Pellies. So if you can find a way to get past the Warriors, you can beat the Pellies. You probably won't beat both of them, but you can. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I think we were a 9 seed, just like you are. We did it. We beat San Antonio that first year with Ja making the postseason. We beat San Antonio, and then we went on the road and we beat the Warriors. It can be done. Probably not going to happen, though. Probably not going to happen, though. But don't count yourself out yet. John Perez, my guy, JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy, JP, writes, do you like Daniels to Washington? I think there's a much better offensive fit than May, and he's more pro-ready than May. I told you, I'm good with either one of those dudes. I'm going to be ecstatic as long as the name that is called isn't J.J. McCarthy, and there are some J.J. McCarthy stands out there, bless their hearts. And I'm not telling you that J.J. McCarthy stinks. I just don't want him. That's all I'm telling you. Again, don't put words in my mouth. I never said J.J. McCarthy stinks, okay? Alex Smith didn't stink in his NFL career. You just knew what you were getting, okay? J.J. McCarthy, to me, is a souped-up Alex Smith. So I'm good. I'm going to pass on that. I appreciate the offer. I know he's going to take care of the football. He's going to make smart decisions. I'm good with all of that. And I think he's going to be fantastic for some NFL team. And he may turn out to be a really good quarterback. And hell, he might turn out to be the best of this group. I'll take my chances with one of the other two, though. Thanks. So, again, Daniels, May, I'm going to be feeling great about either one of them at number 2 overall come April the 25th. So, yes, I am all in on Jaden Daniels. I'm all in on Drake May. Sign me up for either one. And to your point, stylistically, I do think Jaden Daniels is a better fit. And he's more of what you're looking for in today's NFL, if we're being honest with one another. He is more ready, pro-ready to come in and play right away. But again, and I guess you could say I've been somewhat dismissive of this, and maybe not rightfully so. But what are we competing for right away? What are we winning in year one? What's the rush? Is my question. You know, to quote the Road Warriors, what a rush. What's the rush? I don't know what the rush is. So if you take Drake May and you don't think he's going to be ready, okay, so what? What's the rush? Where are we going? All right. If you think we got a chance to win, and a lot of fans do, and I feel bad for them, the ones that think that this group is just going to show up and this is a 9-10 win team this year. I went down that road a bunch of times. You know, at least I waited until after the first year of X said, coach being here to do that thing where we're going to win, 9 or 10 games that season, 11 or 12. I've done that multiple times as well. But in year one of a new regime, you think we're going to win that many games? That's a hard sell for me. But you get Jaden Daniels, and it's much, much more possible than it is with a Drake May. I will absolutely agree with that sentiment. Absolutely. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Chris writes, "Hey Lou, hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise, as always, hope the weekend treated you and yours very well, and I hope this video and this live stream finds you and yours in great spirits." Says 2 questions, 1 and 2. Do you think Jalen Brunson deserves to be first team All-NBA with the Knicks finishing with the 2 seed in the East? And if so, who would you take off and why? That is tough. There's a lot, this is one of the golden ages of guard play in the NBA. It's tough. Maybe we've passed the golden age, but guards are very important in the NBA, and there are a lot of guys that play it well. It's funny you bring Jalen Brunson up because I was just talking to my buddy. And I don't know if I said this on the podcast when he got signed to that $110 million deal or whatever it was, when the Knicks wrestled him away from the Mavs. And I didn't know it was going to be a loss for the Mavs because he brought a level of toughness to that Mavericks team that they didn't have up until this year when they drafted the big from Duke and they added Williams from the Celtics. They've already traded him, but they were looking to add that toughness. That's why they went after Grant Williams. That's why they drafted the big from Duke. I don't know why his name is escaping me right now, but they were looking to add toughness. They were a soft team after they lost Jalen Brunson. He was the heart and soul of the grit that they had, the little grit that they had, along with probably DFA, right? Dorian Finney-Smith. That was the toughness, and all of that was gone already. So they had to replace that. But I did not think he was worth the money. And I remember being adamant that the Knicks are stupid. I can't believe because his dad is on their staff, they're paying all this money to Jalen Brunson. They're so stupid. this is going to blow up in their face. I was adamant. I don't think I've ever been more wrong about an NBA free agent acquisition than I was Jalen Brunson. He's been spectacular. And not only has he been spectacular, he's gone from solid NBA guard to star NBA guard. And he's this close to being superstar NBA guard. And how you take that next step is what you do in the postseason. He had a really solid postseason last year, but he wasn't able to do enough to have the Knicks advance. Okay. The question is going to be, can he take that next step? They've gotten to the 2 seed now. That's a big deal, right? Now what are you going to do with it? Losing Julius Randle, crushing blow. Crushing blow. Going to really stunt the growth of what they could do, right? It's a cap on what they can do in the postseason without Julius Randle. But to answer your question, he's definitely in that conversation. I'd have to sit down and kind of map out who deserves all NBA first team honors at the point guard position, and who I would take over him. Because there are some really good guards, as we know, in this league. But how many of them are playing at a higher level than Jalen Brunson is the question. And if there are any, it's a short list. Kyrie's been really good this year, but not first team all NBA good, I don't think. I don't know. It's probably his show, to be honest with you. I see somebody said Maxey, but Maxey's hasn't been better than Jalen Brunson this season. He's been really good, and he took a massive step forward, and he had to because of Embiid's injury, but he's nowhere near where Brunson's been this season. He's probably the guy, but again, I'm hesitant to do that because every time I do something like that, I forget a guy, and everybody in the comment section after the video is done, like, how could you forget such and such? And I go, Dodo. So when I'm on the spot like that, I'm more inclined to make a mistake. But I'll tell you, it's so the question is, what are we considering like a point guard? Because what we've seen from the all NBA team is it's almost becoming positionless basketball. Like, of course, they're going to reserve one spot for a big, but the other 4 guys don't necessarily have to be point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward. It's usually just like the 5 best dudes. If you're doing that, are you really going to put Brunson in front of SGA with the season he's had? And while Brunson led the Knicks to the 2 seed in the East, which is no small feat, but there are a lot of injuries, a lot of stuff going on, and you still were like 12 games behind the Celtics. SGA took a young, up-and-coming OKC team and made them from a cute story to the #1 seed in the rough, tough, and rugged West. If we're assuming that SGA is being looked upon as just a guard, right? You'd have to say that he'd be one of the guards. Where do you see Luka? Are you looking at Luka as a guard? I think most people consider Luka a guard. I mean, you could say he's a forward, but he's a guard. He's got the ball in his hands all the time. He's a ball-dominant player. Say that Luka's probably another guy you would consider a guard. So I don't know if he's able to crack the all-NBA first team. He's definitely all-NBA second team is Brunson. But he'll be in the conversation. But Luka's probably going to win MVP, and SGA's probably going to get some votes too. Not going to win it, but he'll be in that conversation. And I think you're going to see a situation where he'd probably be second team. But again, I'd have to look at the rest of the landscape of the NBA because Tatum's going to be first team all NBA, right? And so you're running out of spots. At some point, you got to go, okay, well, how many spots do we have left? Joker's going to be all team first NBA. And I don't know, maybe a guy like Ant Edwards or someone like that might be first team all NBA. Just looking around the rest of the league, again, it isn't like it used to be where it was position slotted, like, a point guard, a shooting guard, a small forward, a power forward, and a center. They're just putting like the 5 best dudes, essentially. They usually carve out one spot for a big. That's Joker. So anyway, I digress. Frank McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Frankie baby. Aloha. Appreciate you as always, Frank. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Frank writes, Lou, aloha. Aloha, Frankie. Says, love your idea about Bowers dropping in the draft and trading up. That would work out really well. It's something to consider. I don't know if they'll pull the trigger on it or not, but I forget who initially brought it up. It might have been like Dr. B or somebody brought it up. And I was initially dismissive, like there's no way. And I still don't think Brock Bowers drops, even though there's a pathway to it happening. And, we already talked about it multiple times, and I've already made the case for it happening. Somebody's going to stop that slide at some point because he's so talented. And if it doesn't happen, if no one stops the slide and he actually falls, then it becomes pretty enticing, right? It's a really intriguing opportunity to add a guy like that, because what have we always said about a young quarterback? His best friend a lot of times is the tight end in his rookie season. The easiest guy to get the football to is the guy right in your line of sight, and that's usually the tight end. That guy underneath it is that security blanket. When all else fails on 3rd and 4, I know I can go to my tight end. He's going to bail me out. When all else fails, they're coming with pressure. I know my tight end is going to sit down right over the ball, or he's going to release late. He's going to block initially, release late, and I can just dump it to him, right? Tight ends are a young quarterback's best friend. We saw it last year with C.J. Stroud and what he was able to do with Dalton Schultz. We see it all the time. Yeah. So Lamar Jackson, throughout his career, his safety blanket has always been the tight end, and Mark Andrews for the most part. We know what Kelsey has done for Patrick Mahomes. So it'll be interesting to see if that's something that they entertain or not. I don't know if they'd be willing to give up the draft capital that it would take, but it's definitely something to entertain for sure. If it were to occur where he were to fall right into your wheelhouse where you don't have to give up as much to come back into the first round and get him, I think it's something worth entertaining without question. Thank you once again for the support, Frankie baby. Christopher McLaughlin, my guy Chris, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy Chris writes, hey Lou. What's up, Chris? Once again, really appreciate you. 3 questions. 1 and 2. How close is Steph Curry to Magic Johnson for all-time greatest point guard? And what would he have to do to pass him? 3, which non-top 4 playoff seeded team in the East and West could surprise and make the NBA Finals, and why? So the Magic Johnson, Steph Curry conversation, I don't think it's possible for him to pass Magic Johnson. For most people, like, there are certain untouchables. Steph Curry has carved out a niche for himself in the annals of NBA basketball history. he took the mantle of greatest shooter ever from whoever you had holding that title, Ray Allen, Reggie Miller. He took that title away, and he's the single greatest shooter we've ever seen in NBA history. And I don't think, I hate saying I don't think we'll ever see a shooter greater than him, but it's hard to top the guy that was first. And when I say first, he revolutionized the way the game is played. He's rewired an entire generation of how guys play. Bigs now shoot. And I remember growing up, if you shot the ball from half court, it was a heave. It wasn't a shot. It wasn't a regular form shot. You had to like throw your body weight into it. It was off of 1 foot. It was a heave. It wasn't a regular shot. Guys like Steph Curry and Dame Lillard have changed, and it started with Steph. He was the guy that gave guys like Dame Lillard the green light to shoot from 37 feet away from the basket and it not be a bad shot, because they make those shots, right? Steph's ability to shoot, Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, these were guys that were catch and shoot guys, run around screens. Not that they couldn't create for themselves, but Reggie Miller wasn't shooting, 29-foot step back threes off the bounce, right? He wasn't going between his legs, crossing over behind his back, fading to his left and shooting a three. Ray Allen wasn't doing that either. Like, Steph Curry revolutionized the way the game of basketball is played and how people approach the game from a shooting standpoint. That said, Magic Johnson along with Larry Bird, saved the NBA. Like, the way the game was played was different back in those days. They made the game exciting with that Showtime Lakers team. And Magic Johnson being a big point guard. We had never seen anything like that, right? Big guy, 6'8", bringing the ball down the court, distributing the rock, getting everybody involved, could play all 5 positions. Kareem gets hurt in the finals in his rookie season, I believe it was, and he plays center and hits the hook shot to win the championship. Like, Magic revolutionized the game, not the way it's played, the game of basketball. And so for most people, he's the number one, and you can't change that. If there were ever a player that you would maybe look at in that same light and say, that guy might be better than Magic Johnson, it's LeBron James. I think their games are more similar in terms of the size, the ball handling, the basketball IQ, getting others involved, making players around you better, all of that stuff. I'd say it's LeBron James, but obviously LeBron is number 1 in points. He's going to be probably number 1 in just about every statistical category you could think of because of the longevity of his career and the consistency, not just because a lot of guys have played long NBA careers. Vince Carter played longer than probably LeBron is going to end up playing, right? But it's the longevity coupled with the consistency throughout that longevity that's going to separate LeBron James from every other player that's going to play 15, 17, 20, 22 years in the league, which is crazy. Anyway, Steph Curry is an animal. He's carved out his own niche. I don't think him and Magic Johnson are in that same category. I think it's more LeBron and Magic. And for most people, if you're just talking pure point guard, it's going to be hard to pass Magic Johnson because of what he meant to the NBA, what he meant to the league, and what he did. He made it in vogue just like Steph made it in vogue to shoot threes and to shoot them from all over the floor and to be able to shoot off the bounce. But Magic made it okay for you to be 6'7", 6'8", 6'6", and be a primary ball handler. Because in those days, if you were that tall, you were playing down low. You were playing the 4, right? Because that was the true age of the big man. So you're 6'8", you're a power forward. You're not You're not a point guard. You're not handling the rock. At best, at worst, you're a small forward, right? Because in those days, your power forwards were 6'9", 6'10", and your center was 7 feet 7'1". You weren't handling the rock like that, though. He made it okay for guys like Scottie Pippen to come along and be primary ball handlers down the road, et cetera, et cetera. And we've seen guys like Penny Hardaway. You don't have Penny Hardaway. You don't have a Scottie Pippen without Magic Johnson, right? But I just think they're in different lanes, essentially. When we think of Steph Curry, I don't think we ever, and maybe that is a conversation that will come up eventually. I don't know if we ever have the greatest point guard conversation with him. It's usually the greatest shooter, and I don't think that's a conversation anymore. That used to be the conversation. I don't think that's a conversation anymore. But maybe the point guard conversation will, once his career is done and the full body of work is in front of us, maybe that conversation will start to commence. But I think it's just going to be hard for the generation that still exists, people like myself and others that watched Magic Johnson play, especially the ones that watched his entire career. I got the middle to the back end of Magic's career. I didn't really get the early portion, in the early 80s. But I watched a lot of those because my dad used to tape every single finals. So he had them all on VHS, and I would go back and watch them when I was a kid. So I know about those series and those rivalries with first the Lakers and the Celtics, and then the Lakers and the Pistons, and the Celtics and the Pistons. And I know about all that because he had it on VHS. So it's almost like I lived it. And I don't think you can replace Magic Johnson in the annals of the NBA. He's just one of those guys that kind of feels like he's untouchable unless you're LeBron James, right? That it's one of the few guys that could push him back and probably already has. But I don't know if Steph Curry, and he's got a hell of a legacy, don't get me wrong, but didn't Steph just win his first NBA MVP? NBA title, NBA Finals MVP, rather, when they won the last one. Wasn't that his first one? I know those things shouldn't matter as much, but they do. Those are the things that guys look at. And so, yeah. He's not, I don't think he's in that conversation. Which top four seeded teams in either the East or the West? So obviously in the East, the 76ers, right? If Joel comes back perfectly healthy and they're able to somehow gain chemistry and continuity through playing in the play-in tournament and then winning a series, because theoretically speaking, I expect the 76ers to win that first game, then get the Knicks, and without Julius Randle, I expect them to take care of the Knicks. And this is why I said if Jalen Brunson wants to elevate himself to superstar, put this team on your back like you've done all season, but now is when it matters most. Put them on your back. Unlike last year when you weren't able to do it against the Heat, put them on your back and get them to the next round. We'll see if he can do that. So in the East, it's the 76ers, without question. Because they don't belong at the 7 seed. If Joel doesn't get hurt, they're a top 3 seed for sure. In the West, it's just wide open, as I mentioned. You could argue outside of the Nuggets, who are the 2 seed, the teams that have the best shot at winning the championship are all 4 and back. Clippers, if they're healthy. Mavericks, if they're healthy. Lakers, if they're locked in and they get favorable matchups and they're healthy. Those are all teams that I look at and say, LeBron locked in and able to play. You know, I was having a conversation with my buddy the other day, and I said, here's the thing about the Lakers. LeBron's still LeBron, even though he's 800 years old. He's still LeBron effing James, and at any point he can go off for 18 points in a quarter. Right? We've seen him do it. AD, when he's locked in, and usually when it's playoff basketball, he gets his shit together. If he's healthy and he's locked in, there aren't many bigs better than AD in the NBA. Okay, so he could easily go for 24 and 20, and nobody would blink. Austin Reeves is turning into a damn good basketball player and a reliable one at that. And then the X factor is you just don't know when D'Lo's going to decide to go off for 25 points and make 6 threes. You don't know what game it's going to be when Rui Hachimura, like he did our ass last year, decides to go off and hit 6 threes. You just don't know with the Lakers what team is going to show up, who's going to show out. And so having guys like LeBron and AD on your team give you a shot right off the rip. And then if those others show up, you never know with the Lakers. I think it's ultimately, I guess you could throw the Suns in there. I don't think they're good enough. They don't have enough depth. You're asking too much of 3 guys. Like there's not enough of a supporting cast around Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal to win. They might not. I mean, I think they can beat Minnesota, but after that, I can't see them winning another series after that. But there are a lot of teams in the West, 4 and back that can win. You said outside of the top 4, so Clippers, Lakers, Suns. I mean, they'll take the Suns out of there. I don't think they're winning a damn thing. Clippers, Lakers. I don't think the Warriors are good enough to win anything either. They're going to be a hard out, but they're not winning a chip. Smack City, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Smack City writes, players like JD skill set never win in the playoffs. Never is a harsh word. They don't win often. Jalen Hurts won. He didn't win the Super Bowl, but it wasn't because he didn't do his part, right? He turned in one of the greatest losing Super Bowl quarterback performances we've ever seen. But I get your point. I understand what you're saying. They haven't had a ton of success. Guys that are mobile quarterbacks that rely heavily on their legs don't seem to get it done. But Colin Kaepernick had a tremendous run that one year. He took the 49ers with 2013, I believe it was, 2012 season, I think it was. Maybe 2013, the year they lost to the Ravens. So I think it was the 2012 season, but the Super Bowl was in 2013. He had a hell of a run. I think he was the first quarterback. He may be the only quarterback to have 200 yards passing and like 150 yards rushing in the same game, or whatever the hell he did to the Packers that year in the playoffs. Like, I beg to differ. Again, now to your point, they don't ultimately win the Super Bowl, but saying they never win as if they don't win any games in the playoffs, I think is a bit of a stretch. But if you're just talking about winning a Super Bowl, they haven't had the most success, those types of quarterbacks. But again, you're putting it all on them. How many points did the Ravens score in that Super Bowl? Right? Like, it's not like they went to the Super Bowl like the Rams did in 2018 and scored 3 points and lost the game 13-3. Right? And the defense only gave up 13 points. They scored, and their defense just wasn't good enough to stop the Ravens from scoring. I still contend if the lights don't go out in the stadium, the 49ers are going to win that Super Bowl. Everything changed when the lights went out and came back on. A lot of y'all forget the lights went out in that Super Bowl, and the 49ers were waxing the Ravens at that point. Then everything changed. Lights came back on and the Ravens were invincible. They had the Mario star at that point. They couldn't do anything wrong. I'm just going to say this, though, because this was my initial thought when you said that. And when people say this is my initial thought. But I just wanted to go back and dispel that. But this is my thought, because you're not wrong in the fact that you don't see teams with quarterbacks like that hoist Lombardis, which is your point that you're trying to make. Somebody's going to change that narrative at some point. Okay. So you can either try and be the team that changes it by selecting that guy, or you can go with the theory of those teams don't win, and you can miss out on the guy that ultimately changes that narrative. What's it going to be? I myself am open to any and everything. And if you tell me this is the right guy, I'm rolling with JD5, and let's have him be the guy that breaks that curse and says, hey, mobile guys can get it done too. Why not us? Smack City, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, JD's reliance on his legs will be his downfall. Look at Lamar, Vic, Cam. They never get the job done because of it. Need to win from the pocket to then create off of the legs. You're not wrong from the standpoint of you have to be able to play from the pocket. But who's to say that the guys that you named and Jaden Daniels can't play from the pocket? The fact that they rely on their legs is a byproduct of their ability to be athletic enough to use their legs. A lot of the guys who play from the pocket strictly do that because they can't do what Michael Vick, Lamar Jackson, and guys like that have done over the life of their careers. They don't have that ability. They weren't blessed with the ability to take off and scamper for 47 yards when things break down, right? So they have to develop from the pocket. Some of these guys don't have to do it as much because their legs are there. And yes, he does rely on his legs, but he's also, I think, more advanced coming into the league as a passer than any of the guys that you just named, Vic, Cam, or Lamar. I think he's more advanced as a passer than all of them. And every single one of those guys that you named, well, not everyone. Vic never made it to the Super Bowl. I truly believe if there weren't the dogfighting, situation that came up, he would have had a chance to do something special in Atlanta. He was becoming pretty damn good. Who knows, though? He was also smelling himself. And that whole situation did humble him. But he was the man, right? Lamar, I think he just squandered his best opportunity, but the Ravens are still in a great position to win. That's a well-run organization. They don't rebuild. They just reload, and they're still really good. And so losing Mike McDonald and losing that defensive scheme and having the defense play as good as they were playing and not taking advantage, I think that if he ever wins, this is the year he'll look back on and say, that was my best shot and I blew it. And I truly believe that. But Cam made it to the Super Bowl. He was 15-1. He made it to the Super Bowl. Now, they didn't get done. But if you go back and look, Cam was the MVP for that was a garbage-ass supporting cast around him. Okay. The fact that Cam did what he did that year in the manner that he did it there should be a case study done on that shit. You go back and look at the guys he was throwing the football to that year. You come back and tell me that Cam Newton wasn't the damn MVP for real. Okay. That shit was a monstrosity what he was throwing the football to that year. And still put up the numbers and did what they did the way that they did it. That Denver defense was one of the most dominant we've seen in the last 15 years. It was that good of a unit. Last decade, we don't even have to go back 15 because that was 2015. That's, to me, That's the best defense we've seen in the last decade. So he just ran into a buzzsaw is what happened. But JD's, what I worry about, because so many people talk about his size, this, that, and I don't worry about it as much. Could it become a problem? Sure, it could. But it really wasn't one in college football. You know, he got removed from a game or two. I know the Missouri game he left briefly, came back. He got knocked out of the Alabama game. That was a vicious hit. That would have taken anybody. I don't give a damn who you were. You take a helmet-to-helmet shot like that, you're done essentially. But he didn't miss time because of his frame. He took some hellacious shots and he popped up. At the end of the day, what I'm concerned is he doesn't create off schedule with his arm, but not that you don't usually get better at that, but normally that's innate, the ability to create off schedule, and that doesn't seem to be his thing. But if you're telling me that I have to choose between a guy that wins from the pocket or a guy that has the ability when shit breaks down to take off and run for 47 yards, give me the guy that can take off and run for 47 yards. I'll try my hand at that, and I'll take my chances with that guy over the guy that can't do that. Right? So the thing is, Drake May has the ability, it won't be for 47, but he's got the ability to run for 27 and still throw on the move when things break down and make something happen with his arm. I appreciate that, because there's not this significant drop off to where Drake May can't do anything. He's still mobile enough to make something happen when things break down with his arm or his legs. But if you're asking me to choose between a guy who can't make anything happen off schedule, like a Mac Jones, or someone even a little bit higher, like a Dak Prescott, for instance. Dak post-injury, ankle injury, like Dak's not running anywhere for real. Dak doesn't scare you off schedule. Dak's not really going anywhere. His damage is really going to be done in the pocket. Give me Jaden Daniels. I'm fine, thanks. Take Jaden Daniels. Nick Riley, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Nick, my guy, Nick at Night, writes, Drake May on the way, bro, and go Lakers. You're going to need a lot to happen to get Drake May. You're going to either need the Patriots to ante up. First, you're going to need the Commanders to pass on him. That's number one, which they're favored to do right now. So that's the first domino, is you're going to need Washington to pass up on him, which can happen. Then you're going to need the Patriots to not only pass on him, but you're going to need the Patriots to pass on him, and then Arizona then say, all right, we'll deal with you, right? Because if the Patriots don't want him, it gets interesting. Because while I still think Minnesota, to me, I wouldn't even be interested in dealing with anybody else. If you're the Patriots, you know what? It makes more sense to send him. If I think this kid is good, clearly he wasn't good enough for me to draft him. But if I think the kid is good enough to be a problem, I'm shipping him to the NFC if I have my choice. So if I'm, looking to make a deal, I'd probably do it with Minnesota before I did it with a team like the Vegas Raiders, because I'm competing with them to try to make the playoffs. So make more sense. But there's a path to you getting your hands on Drake May. I still think it's highly unlikely that he ends up a Minnesota Viking. But we'll see. Stranger things have happened, right? This whole time we've been talking about 1, 2, 3, May, Daniels, Williams, in whatever order you like, but it's going to be those three going first. Does it have to be, though? Doesn't have to be. All that needs to happen for Drake May to be available for you to come up and select is one of those three not make it in the top 3 or 4 picks. What may have you? All you need is JJ McCarthy to infiltrate. I think it's a long shot, but New England, I think they're the key. I don't see Washington botching this process. I see them drafting one of the two. New England is the wild card because they'll do some crazy shit like draft JJ McCarthy. And for the JJ McCarthy stands out there, they're telling me I'm crazy because drafting McCarthy isn't crazy. He's going to be really good. And you might be right. He may be excellent and the best quarterback in this draft class. You might be right. If nothing else, he might be the most consistent of this group. Because generally, guys like him are consistent. They're the model of consistency. You don't usually win anything with them other than, division crowns. You'll win your division almost every year. Look at Alex Smith with the Kansas City Chiefs. They won the division almost every damn year. By the time he left San Francisco, they were winning the division every year. But you knew you weren't going to win anything when you got to playoffs with Alex Smith. So we'll see. And I'm praying your Lakers end up in the 8th seed. But in doing that, you would have to, then you wouldn't get the Warriors, which I don't care about. I'd much rather get OKC Lakers than, Nuggets, Lakers, Warriors, OKC. I'd much rather have Lakers, OKC, because I know y'all can beat them. I don't think the Warriors can beat OKC. My guy, Nick at Night. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy, Nick at Night, writes, also, if you haven't already, drop my guy Lou a like and sub up. Hashtag Lab Room Fam. Love seeing you make it on Bleacher Report. Well deserved, fam. I appreciate that, man. The grind has been long. It's been hard, but it's been worth it, man. And any little crumb that I get, I'm very appreciative of it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm proud of where I'm at, but I'm far from where I want to be. So, as a wise man once said, the marathon continues. So, appreciate you, though. You've been there, one of those dudes that's been there since way back when. Anytime you going back to the hashtag Lab Room Fam, you've been around for a very long time. You've been around for a very long time. Really appreciate you, Dick, man. Always good to chop it up with you. Swaggy P, my guy. Swaggy P, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, what up, Lou? Hope all is well. Likewise. My friend and I were talking about heartbreaking losses in sports, and I was wondering, what is the loss across all sports that you can't get over or hurts the most? Hashtag HTTC. Oh, for me, without a doubt, it's not even close. It's the Portland Trail Blazers losing to the Los Angeles Lakers in the 2000 Western Conference Finals. That shit feels like it happened yesterday, and I'm not a Portland Trail Blazers fan. I was a Scottie Pippen fan. And he went to Portland, and it was his opportunity to prove he could win without Mike. And Mike desperately didn't want him to win without him. So much so that in going into Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals, Ron Harper was on the Los Angeles Lakers. Scottie was on the Blazers. He called Ron Harper to wish him good luck because he didn't want to see Scottie win without him. That was a damn good Blazers team, man. Shit. And everybody knew that was the finals, because it didn't matter who won that series. They were going to beat the Nets or the Pacers. I think it was the Pacers or the Nets. Whoever it was, it didn't matter. I think it was the Pacers. Whoever won that series was going to win the finals. And the Lakers, I think, ended up winning 4-1, right? Yeah, that shit hurts, man. That one stung. a lot because we were up big. Like we should have won that game. And I remember where I was at. I remember how I still don't like seeing the alley-oop that Kobe threw to Shaq, and then Shaq doing the pointing and running down the court with his mouth. Like, I still don't like seeing that shit to this day. I see that shit and I turn it off. I don't want to see that shit. That shit hurt. It still hurts. Like right now, I'm getting mad right now talking about that shit. For me, that's the one because I wanted that one so bad for Scotty. You see how Scotty be acting up now, talking about Jordan and trying to shit on. He wanted that one. I wanted that one for him. So he could step out of that shadow and say, I got one without him. And that was the opportunity. That team was loaded. You think about that team. Arvydas Sabonis, Detlef Schrempf, Steve Smith, Rasheed Wallace, Jermaine O'Neal, Scottie Pippen. We had Damon Stoudemire. We had no business losing that series. We were better than that Lakers team. Better than that Lakers. We were the deepest team in the NBA, and it wasn't close. That one, whew, that one hurts. That shit still hurts today. Jado, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, what up, Lou? Do you think AP wants May over Daniels? I don't know. It's almost impossible for me to say what he wants. I told you that I can tell you this much. I know this is what I feel, and I can't say this for sure. I can't confirm nor deny this. I think the staff, and I've said this a number of times, I think they want Jaden Daniels. Players, coaches, my guy, Derek B, asked me this question. And I want to answer it because it was going to take too long to do it in written form on socials. But he asked me, why is it that players and coaches are all fascinated with Jaden Daniels and he's their pick without question, no questions asked? But you ask any of the evaluators and they'll tell you that it's Drake May for the most part, right? So there seems to be a disconnect there. And it's pretty simple why that happens. And so if Derek B is listening or he watches this later on, here's your answer. Players and coaches can't see past tomorrow, let alone 2-3 years down the road. Players and coaches live in the moment because that's all they got. So from a player's perspective, game recognized game, and Jaden Daniels looks real familiar to them, right? Because they want the guy that can make plays right now that's going to come in and give them a chance to win right now. That's how all players are wired to think. Players don't know how long they're going to be able to play. They don't know if they're going to be healthy next year. They can't think about, well, we're drafting this kid. He may not be ready this year, but he might be a damn good quarterback next year. That's not how players think. Can this dude help me win this year or not? That's how players operate. That's how coaches operate. You know why? Because in this league, or any league for that matter, coaches aren't guaranteed to be there when the shit pops off. You know, remember, trust the process? The guy that started it wasn't there when the process was fulfilled. By the time the 76ers were any good, the guy that started all of that, Hinkie, wasn't even there. Because you don't get to stick around and wait and see if shit turns out how you plan it to turn out. You draft Drake May, and year one is a disaster. And I'm not saying this is what would happen, but I'm just saying, you draft Drake May and you're just thinking, hey, this kid will be good in 2 or 3 years. Well, year one was a disaster. Year two, one of your star players gets hurt, and it turns out to be another disaster. And then, by the third year, Dan Quinn is now in a win or he's going to be fired mode, right? Well, now you need that rookie quarterback or that quarterback that you drafted to now show up and show out, and you need everything around him to be perfect, or it's curtains for you as a coach. And they think about it in that context. And I'll take it a step further. If you're like a guy like Dan Quinn, for instance, you want a guy that's not going to turn it over because you're a defensive-minded coach. So you want a guy that's not going to turn it over. Jaden Daniels, 4 interceptions last year. You want a guy that is going to be able to make plays off script, off schedule. And you think about it from a defensive coach standpoint. Who's the harder guy to defend? Who's the guy that I would spend extra hours that week having to prepare for? It's Jaden Daniels. So players often look at things from that perspective. Like, who's the guy that I would look at and say, man, I wish he was on my team, or damn, I don't want to play against that guy. Or as Randy Moss once said about Brett Favre, he must see TV. Even when we playing against him, I'm standing up on the sidelines watching. Who's that guy? That's Jaden Daniels. So players see that. That's the guy they want. That's the guy that they're going to vouch for. Coaches see that and they say, hey, that's the guy that's going to help me win now. Not 2 or 3 years from now. Now. Meanwhile, GMs are thinking about the future, the long term, which is why I said there's this conflict of interest if you have a coach-centric layout. Because on one hand, the head coach is responsible for the everyday operation and needing to win now, but he also is in charge of the long-term health of the organization. So there's a conflict of interest there, because the long-term for Washington, trading Montez Sweat and Chase Young was the most beneficial thing for this team moving forward. We're seeing the benefits of it right now, which is why we have all these draft picks and this draft capital and all this optionality exists, because they were proactive, they saw the future, and they made moves to better our future. But in the present day, that was the last straw. That was the crippling final blow that ended any hope of Ron Rivera having a chance to salvage his last season in Washington. Trading both of those guys meant the defense was going to go to hell in a hand. It already wasn't good to begin with. Okay, the defense was already atrocious. You take away the 2 guys that can get to the quarterback, which we didn't get to the quarterback really the rest of the season, you're dead. Dead, I tell you. And a GM is always thinking ahead. The players and the coaching staff are always playing checkers. The GM has to be playing chess. And so that would align itself with a guy like Drake May, because I'm not thinking about this year if I'm Adam Peters. I'm thinking about what guy gives us the chance to win multiple Super Bowls because his ceiling is the highest. That's Drake May. If you're the coaching staff, to hell with what guy's ceiling is the highest and what guy could win me a Super Bowl 4 or 5 years down the road. What guy gives me a chance to make the playoffs in year 1? What guy gives me a chance to get this thing off to a great start so that we can start believing in ourselves and potentially roll that first successful season into a second and a third, so forth and so forth. Remember, Ron Rivera had a successful first season. It was 7-9, I'm well aware, but it's still a playoff season. They still won the division, and that didn't amount to shit. But we also didn't have a quarterback either. That was off of pure luck. The rest of the division sucked, and you did it with like 5 different starting quarterbacks that year, right? So it was a totally different situation, but obviously the staff, I think the coaching staff and the players would prefer Jaden Daniels because they see a guy that can help them win now versus the front office and people that are draft pundits, people that are talent evaluators. They're looking for the guy that has the highest upside. That's their job, which is why most people are going to have Drake May ahead of Jaden Daniels from that standpoint. When you see that, it's because you're talking about the ceiling. And their job isn't to ensure that you win now. The reason you're drafting second is because you suck ass. You're not winning shit anyway next year. So you shouldn't be overly consumed with getting a guy that can help you win right now, because your window isn't even open right now. Your window is going to be in 2-3 years when presumably that quarterback that you draft now is ready to really take that step forward. And so that's why you see a lot of talent evaluators, GMs, guys in those positions kind of look for, and you got to do that at all positions. It's not just quarterback. You know, I've said this already. Dallas Turner from Chop Robinson, and we're going to get into this because we're going to talk edge rushers tomorrow night. But Chop Robinson, to me, isn't a first round. He's not a first round caliber player off of production and skill set. From a talent perspective, God-given ability, that's what you're drafting him for. Okay? You have to be able to project. That coaching is going to get him to where his talent is right now. His God-given abilities, they're up here. Everything else is down here. Coaching is supposed to bridge that gap. That's what you're drafting him for. Same thing with the quarterback position. Nothing. It's no different, right? Drake May's ceiling is up here. His floor is down here. Coaching is supposed to bring the two closer together, right? With Jaden Daniels, the ceiling is here, but the floor is right here, right? There's not as much distance between the two because he's a safer pick. He gives you probably better chance to have immediate results. And that's why I think you see people who are closer to the play on the field, coaches, players, more enamored with what Jaden Daniels brings to the table. But I digress. John Perez, my guy. JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. JP writes, I know you're a massive Laker hater because they've won for many years, but those Kobe Shaq teams in the 2000s were so good. It was hard to beat them. But we had y'all ass on the ropes, though. Y'all shouldn't have won that series. Ask anybody. They'll tell you. That was the beginning of the Shaq and Kobe era, right? That alley-oop and Shaq running, pointing in the air, that shit was symbolic of what was to come. That was the beginning. And that happened on us, and it shouldn't have happened on our watch. Y'all could have done whatever y'all wanted to do the year after that. Because that Blazers team was getting old. That was the opportunity. Arvidas was on his last legs. Detlef Schrempf was on his last legs. Steve Smith was on his last. Like, that was an old team. Scotty was on his last leg. We had to win that year. Y'all were young. Y'all were vibrant. Y'all had many more years of dominance to come. We had to win that year. And we were up big. 18. Blew that shit. Anyway, I digress. Let's transition to our final segment of the show and garbage time. So, first of all, I want to thank all of y'all for kicking it with the kid on this Monday night episode. I want to take this time to remind y'all, as I told y'all I'm going to continue to do, massive announcement during the draft, day one. I'm gonna make the announcement at the smack dab middle of the draft, so in between picks 16 and 17. If we make it to the middle of the draft, gonna make a massive announcement. I want you guys to be there for it. So make sure you stay locked in to the draft coverage, even if you're only there for the Commanders pick at 2. Stay locked in. Because, again, I've said this already, too. If you're a Commanders fan and the only reason you're there is to see what the Commanders do, you should stick around in the first round because there's a chance that the Commanders could be back in the first round. They could be back in the fold. You don't know what they are going to do. And this is a big draft for me as a fan from the standpoint of this is going to give me a read on what to expect moving forward from Adam Peters, Lance Newmark, and company. I have no idea. All I can go off of is what 49ers, fans and, personnel, staffers, and people that cover the team tell us. Like, one of the things that we're starting to hear is that if Adam Peters brings you in for a visit, it's because he's planning on drafting you. Like, they don't bullshit around. Like, remember, I told you, we don't know what these top 30 visits mean, right? We don't know what it means to have a top 30 visit in Washington anymore. I used to know what that meant with Rivera because, he and Martin Mayhew made it abundantly clear that their strategy with those top 30 visits wasn't to solidify a guy. It was more on the basis of, hey, we got some questions. Whether it's off the field stuff, red flags, some inconsistent play, we got questions, and we're going to use this opportunity to get some answers from you. Whereas Adam Peters might be on the other end of the spectrum, like, to hell with that. We know who you are. We just want to solidify that you're what we think you are so we can draft you. We're going to find out if it's somewhere in between those two, if it's all the way to the, hey, if he brings you in, you're more likely than not going to end up a Commander. We'll see, right? Because what we're hearing from 49ers beat writers and fans now, when the 49ers bring you in for a visit, it's because they're more than interested. I like you. I want you. I'm going to have you. We're going to see if that exists here in Washington with Adam Peters and company. So anyway, big announcement coming during the draft. Hopefully you guys will be there to be a part of it, and look forward to chopping it up with you guys. Then it's going to be a really busy 2 weeks heading into the draft. I'm going to be live almost every night. There won't be many nights here leading up to the draft where I won't be live in some way, shape, or form. I hate the next couple of nights because I'll be probably stepping on the toes of those play-in games. I want to watch them myself, but I also have shit to say. So I may have the game on while I'm live with you guys, and we can be kind of talking about the game a little bit as we're live. But for the most part, and then I may not be live for long. I may be on for an hour, and then boom, you can get back to the game. A lot of y'all in these situations, you'll have the game on and you'll have me on. And I appreciate that because you don't have to rock with me in that instance. You can be like, hey, I catch you on playback, Louie T. And a lot of y'all will simulcast my ass. Like, okay, got the game on over here, got my guy Louie T on over here. So we covered. Hey, whatever the case may be. I know those play-in tournament games are going to start tomorrow and run all the way through Friday, more likely than not, because the playoffs probably start Saturday, if I had to guess. Usually it starts on Saturday. So I'm assuming you'll get 2 play-in games tomorrow, 2 more on Wednesday, and then you'll get the finals games on Thursday. So I'm thinking it'll be through Thursday. You'll have no games Friday, and then the playoffs will start on Saturday. That's my guess. I think that's the format that they've gone with over the last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. So either way, I digress. That's going to do it for me. Your man, Louie T, here on the 411th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. That was a fun episode. And generally, these late night Louie editions are exactly that. And you guys never disappoint. And you did it again. I really appreciate y'all. Look forward to chopping it up with you again tomorrow night when we will be talking edge rushers in the 2024 NFL draft. We'll knock down edge rushers, and then at some point this week, whether it's live or I just do an upload, we'll knock down the cornerback position as well, as we make sure we knock down all the pertinent positions heading into the draft. Like I said, we'll get through all the ones that we know are going to be ravaged. We've already gone through the receiver position. We're going to hit edge rusher. We've already done the tackle position. We've already done the quarterback position. We're going to knock down the cornerback position. And if time permits, we'll circle back. We'll hit safety, linebacker, running back. But the likelihood is we won't. But we will see. Anyway, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. Until then, y'all take it easy. God bless and good night.